So let's say that I had these 2 points. How would I calculate the slope? It's from 8.4. Stuff we already did. Stuff the guy asked and you had no questions on the homework. Which means that I'm assuming you know this inside and out. How would I calculate slope here? Anybody? Elijah, go ahead.
You would have to multiply both the points by each other. Right? Is that wrong?
No, that's not correct.
I don't remember.
7 minus 2 over 6 minus 1, right? You have to keep the order correct, right? 7 minus 2, so it's 6 minus 1. You get 5 over 5. Your answer will be 1. This is how you calculate the slope, right? Now we talked about the different kinds of slope, right? The positive slope, the negative slope, right? The positive slope is the slope where it's going up like this one. Negative slope is where it's going down like this, right? And then there was the horizontal slope and the vertical slope, right? These are the type of things that we talked about in 8.4. Today, we're going to actually learn a form of the line, okay? So a form of the line called the slope-intercept form, okay? So on 8.5, we're on page 430. And on page 40, it says the slope-intercept form. And what it says there is if I have a form that looks like this, okay, where y alone is equal to something, okay, then the number in front right here is going to automatically be your slope. And this guy here is automatically going to be your y-intercept. Okay? So if I gave you this equation, I said, what's the slope? You should just be able to, without even doing any calculations, say, oh, the slope is 2. Right? And the intercept is 1. Y-intercept is 1. Or if it's something that looks like this, what is the y-intercept? The y-intercept is -1, right? Okay. When does the y-intercept happen? Let's see if this is 8.3. We learned this in 8.3. The y-intercept happens when x is equal to 0, right? When x is equal to 0, we get the y-intercept. So if I put x equals 0 here, this guy goes away, right? Because it's 2 times 0, and you end up with -1. So that's why that is the y-intercept automatically. So whatever number on this side is going to be your y-intercept. Okay. They can always trick you, and they would ask you something like this and say, okay, what's the y-intercept? What's the y-intercept here? It's 0, right? Because you are, there's a plus 0 here, right? So it's going to be 0 is going to be your y-intercept. Okay. Another question, let's say that I have y is equal to 1/2 x minus 5, and I asked you what is the slope, what would your answer be? Just the number right here, right? Which would be 1/2, right? So your slope would be 1/2. Okay. And my y-intercept again would be -5, right? -5 would be my y-intercept, okay? So this is what the slope-intercept form does. Let's go in the middle of page 430. And there's a little beige box there. If you read that, it says, a linear equation of the form y is equal to mx plus b is said to be in slope-intercept form. The slope is m, and the y-intercept is b. Okay. Let's see if we can do example number 1. Example number 1 says, identify the slope and the y-intercept. So A, y is equal to x minus 4, I'm sorry. X minus 4, B, y is equal to, It's not going to give us that easily. So on this one, we have a 3x plus 5y is equal to 10. Okay, so on the first one, what is my slope? Can you tell you what my slope is? This number in front of the x, right? So here, there's an invisible 1 there, right? Because 1 times x is x, correct? So the slope is going to be 1, all right? And then in my y-intercept is going to be what? Negative 4, correct. All right, so 1 is the slope. This is going to be your y-intercept. This is negative 4, okay? So on this one, I am not in slope-intercept form, right? So I have to force it into y-intercept form, which means that I have to solve for the y. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract out the 3x first on both sides, goes away. 5y is equal to negative 3x plus 10. What's my next step here? Lissandra, what do I need to do? Logan, what's the next step I need to do?
You're going to multiply each side by 1/5.
Okay, or the same thing would be just divide by 5, right? Divide those everything by 5. So let's divide everything by 5. If I divide everything by 5, now the 5 goes away. I have y is equal to negative 3 over 5x plus 2. Okay, so now I'm in slope-intercept form, right? So I have y is equal to something x plus some or minus something, right? So what here is my slope? Pastor? Negative 3/5, right? Negative 3/5, okay, all right. My y-intercept, was it? That was it, Josh. Plus 2, right? 2, all right. All right, cool, that's good. Example number 2. Example number 2, we're going to graph the slope-intercept form. Okay, y is equal to negative 2/3 x plus 4 plus 4 plus 4. Okay. So I'm going to start with the y-intercept. What's my y-intercept here? 4. So I'm going to do an x equal to 0. Y is going to be equal to 4. So that's my starting point. Then I have a slope of negative 2/3, which means that every time I go negative 2 on the rise, I'm going to have a run of 3. So run of 3. So I can go 3 this way, and then I'm going to go 2 up or down. Why is it down? Because it's negative. Exactly. Very good. Okay, so I'm going to go from, so this is going to be 3, because I went 3 this way, right? I went 3 this way. So this is going to be 3. Then I went 2 down from 4, so it's going to be 2. Correct? Everybody get that? Let's do one more point. Again, I'm going to go 3 and then 2 down. So it's going to be here. So I went from 3 to, I went 3 from 3, so it's going to be 6. I started at 2, I went 2 down, so it's going to be 0. I'm just going to go ahead and connect those 3 dots. And that's how I'm going to graph the graph. Okay? You understand how that negative 2/3 thing worked out? Okay? That's important. Okay? If I had like y is equal to 2x plus 4, okay, then I would go over here and I start at 4. And since the slope is 2, I would go over 1, up 2, right? Over 1, up 2. Everybody understand that? Right? So this is basically 2 over 1. So my run is 1. My rise is going to be 2. So I'm going to go 1 over, 2 up, 1 over, 2 up. Okay, everybody see that? Okay, so that's that. Let's do example number 3. Example number 3, we have Earth science. The temperature at Earth's surface averages about 20 degrees Celsius. In the crust below the surface, the temperature rises by about 25 Celsius per kilometer of depth. So every time we go 1 kilometer down, the temperature is going to rise 25 degrees. Why is the temperature going to rise? Why does it not go down? Why does it go up?
You're getting closer to its core.
To its core. What's in the core? Magma, right? There's all that heat, right? Okay. Okay, so there we go. So A, write an equation that approximates the temperature below the Earth's surface as a function of depth. Okay. So Y, the temperature is going to be, we're starting at 20. It says we start at 20 on the surface, right? So that's going to be my starting point, which is going to be the Y-intercept. Okay. And then every time I go 1 kilometer down, I'm going to go up. The temperature is going up. So it's going to be a positive 25x. So the x would be the depth that we go, how many kilometers, right? Because every kilometer we go down, we gain 25 degrees, right? So we start at 20. So let's think about it. If I went down 1 kilometer, I'm going to get 25 times 1 plus 20, which is going to be 45, right? Because I gained 25, right? Then I go down 1 more kilometer at 2 kilometers, right? It's going to be 25 times 2, which is 50, plus 20, which is going to be 70. So this makes sense, right? In other words, after you have came up with an equation, you want to kind of, in your own mind, make sure that it actually works. Right? So that would be your equation. B, the underground bacteria exists that can survive temperatures of up to 110 degrees. Find the maximum depth at which these bacteria can live. So at what point is the temperature going to be 110? Is what it's asking for, right? We're asking for at what time and what depth is it going to be 110? So we have to solve this. So how would I solve this? Pastor, what's the first thing I'm going to do? I want to find out what x is. So I want x by itself. Well, I need to get rid of this guy first, right?
You multiply 20 on each side?
No, it's plus 20. So I'm just going to go ahead and subtract 20 from both sides.
Yeah.
Goes away. I get 25x is equal to 90 minus 20. 110 minus 20, which is 90. So what's my next step? Divide everything by 25. This guy now goes away. X is going to be equal to 90 divided by 25, which is 3.6. Okay. So 3.6 kilometer is the correct answer. Flip the page. Now we're going to talk about parallel and perpendicular lines, okay? So parallel lines means that the slopes are what? If I have two lines that are parallel, let's kind of look at this. So let's say we have a graph. We have a graph like this, and I have one line that looks like this. And I have another line that is parallel to that, and it's going to look so parallel, because this is how we say it's parallel. So the slope is going to be what? What do you think the slopes are going to be? What do they look like? Okay, they're positive. What else? Does it look like the slopes are the same? Right? Because if the same run, you have the same rise, you're going to have the same rise here. So in parallel lines, slopes are the same. In parallel lines, the slopes are the same. If you have perpendicular lines, what does perpendicular mean? Does anybody know what perpendicular means? So if I had this line and I have this line here is perpendicular, that means that the angle here that they meet together is 90 degrees. It's called perpendicular. So in perpendicular lines, if I call the slope here M1 and this slope M2, M1 times M2 is going to be -1. And when you multiply these two slopes together, they're going to be -1. So if I had, let's say this slope here is 2, what would this slope here be? Anybody want to hazard a guess there? What would it be? What can I multiply to 2 to get -1? So let's see if we can solve this out, right? M1 was 2. 2 times M2 is equal to -1. If I divide both sides by 2, I'm going to get that, right? So this must have been -1/2. Right? If this guy here was 5, what would this guy here be now? What can I multiply to 5 to get -1? Now this is going to be 5 and -1, right? So I'm going to divide both sides by 5. So M2 is going to be equal to -1/5, right? -1/5. Okay, what do you see that? All right. So when you're perpendicular, you're multiplying to get -1. So let's look at the top of page 432. On your book, it says, let's look at the one on the left. It says, 2 non-vertical parallel lines have the same slope. We were talking about that. So if I have one on the other, they're both going to have the same slope. 2 non-vertical perpendicular lines, such as lines A and C below, have slopes that are negative reciprocals of each other. Negative. What's a reciprocal? Anybody know what a reciprocal is? A reciprocal is just flipping a number over, right? So if I have, but it's a negative reciprocal. So if M1 is equal to 2/3, M2 will be just flipping it over and adding a negative to it. Just like we did before here, right? M1 is equal to 2. M2 would be flipping it over 1/2 and put a negative to it. All right? When M1 is equal to 5, M1 is equal to 5. Again, you flip it over. M2 would be -1/5. And you're going to add the negative to it. So it's a negative reciprocal. Okay? So if M1 here was 3/4, what would M2 be? Anybody? -4/3. Right? You flip it over, and then you put the negative to it. Okay? All right. So there we go. Let's see if we can do example number 4. Example 4, find the slope of a line that has the given relationship to the line to the equation of that. 4x plus 3y is equal to -18. Okay, so this is not in slope-intercept form. So let's go ahead and make it into slope-intercept form. I want y by itself. Okay, so I need to get rid of this guy here first. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract that from both sides. 3y is equal to negative 4x minus 18. Now I need to get rid of the 3. Since it's multiplied, I need to go ahead and divide 3. Everything goes away. Y is equal to negative 4/3 x minus 6. A, I need to find the slope that is parallel to this line. If I had a slope that is parallel to this line, what would the slope be? Remember, when it's parallel, the slopes have to be what? What do we say? We said they have to be the same, right? They have to be the same. So what's the slope here? Negative 4/3, right? Negative 4/3, right? Negative 4/3. So your parallel line would have a slope of negative 4/3. What about a perpendicular line? A perpendicular line, we have to do this to what to this? You flip it over and add a negative, right? So it's going to be, if I flipped it over, this is what I'm going to have, but I'm going to add a negative to that. The negatives cancel out. So it's going to be 3/4 would be my slope of a perpendicular line. Okay? All right, so we're done.